We're going to take a look at selecting an anchor in the context that a mountain leader would need to do if they were going to use a rope in an emergency. What is absolutely paramount about that anchor is that it's unquestionable in its suitability. And what we're going to do is have a look at a system that will allow us to come up with that decision. The choice of anchors that I have on the mountain might be a tree or a rock anchor. And within the rock anchor selection, then I might choose what we call bedrock, so it's actually part of the mountain, or it might be a boulder that's been dislodged that's now sat there in the ground. Around here we have boulders that we can choose and select, so we're going to have a look at that as to how I would go about making that decision as to what is suitable and what isn't. The method that I'm going to use consists of the 5 S's, and they are size, stability, shape, sharpness and situation. We're going to take a look at size, and size matters, and what I'm going to use is myself as a reference. So the boulder that I choose needs to be as big or bigger than me, and that's if I'm curled up or I'm stretched out. 3 boulders here that I could choose from, however I'm going to discard that one straight away as being far too small. I have one here that's still not as big as me, and this one is at least as big as me, so I'm happy that I can now move on to the next S, which is stability. For the stability test, there are 3 parts to it. The first one is a visual inspection around the boulder, and what I like about this one is that it's level and that a large proportion of it is sat into the ground. What would be less good is if this was sat on the surface, say for example on a bed of small stones that could act as ball bearings, and also it was on a slope where gravity could work against it. The second test is to hit the rock, and I'm going to use one hand, the heel of one hand, to hit it and send force through the rock. But what's really important is that the other hand is on the rock, and that this hand can receive information about vibration. And what then I need to do is to make a decision as to whether that's too much vibration in that rock. If I'm happy with that though, I can now go around onto the final test and ramp it up a little bit, which is now to kick the rock. So I'm going to come behind the boulder, check it in the direction that I want to use it, and I'm going to hit it or kick it with my foot. As I'm doing that, I'm looking around the boulder, the sides of the boulder, to see if I can see any movement. So I'm happy with the stability, and we're now going to have a look at the shape to see if that is also suitable. For the shape test, what's really important is that it's going to work in the direction that the load might come onto it. So here we're going to say that the steep ground is behind me. What I will do is I'll get the rope out and just do a quick test, what we call the seesaw test, to make sure that the rope will stay nice and low and in position. Once the rope is in position, I'm going to keep low while I now seesaw the rope. And when I do that, I want to make sure that it doesn't move. It stays in that position around the rock. If, for example, the force was coming a bit higher and I did that test, we can see here it's actually moving and starting to roll off the boulder. What I've got to be happy with is that it's fine in the direction that I want to use it. Now on to sharpness. And where I've positioned that rope, I want to check all the way around the boulder for any sharp edges. This is well-weathered volcanic mountain rock and therefore quite smooth. But I'm checking nonetheless to make sure that there's nothing really sharp that might cut into the rope. That all feels nice and smooth. If there was a sharp edge, then I might think about padding it out with a spare hat or some spare clothing that I could just put underneath the rope to protect it. The final S is situation, and what I'm looking for is that my anchor is in line with the steep ground. It also needs to be far enough away from the edge, and if it was too close it would be difficult to manage that situation. Now that I've been through the 5 S's and I'm happy with this as an anchor, we're now going to look at how to attach onto that to be able to then manage the steep ground.